I think this is a good spot for us to transition to the I guess, disruption and new way of thinking that's from your former career as the head of the TLC, the Taxi and Limousine Corporation. You know, we're seeing now, and I think you saw this as you were leaving the office, the influx of new age technology that was having a dramatic impact on the taxi industry. This fight is coming to a head, especially with Uber and the crackdown on Uber. What's your take on how this is going to play out in the future? Can you continue to regulate the taxi industry, or is there some level where you have to accept that there's going to be disruption from outside forces?
Yeah, well, both, I guess. You know, you're right. The work as head of the TLC actually was terrific preparation for this job, because it's been a period of enormous change in the taxi industry, and I think that has helped me think about how to manage change in the legal education world. You know, in the taxi context, you asked, can you regulate, or is change here to stay? Change is obviously and absolutely here to stay. You know, the app-based services have revolutionized the industry for the better. I mean, passengers have more options, much more control over the kind of service they get and how they get the service than they've ever had before, and that's all to the good. You know, when people say, so the industry has grown in size so much, and we've heard from the current administration some concern about how many new cars are being put into service. The reason there are so many new cars is because the service is better and more customers are using it. The cars aren't just driving around empty, they're driving around full of New Yorkers, tourists, business people who work here during the day, who want that service to get where they're going. So the fact that there are more cars is good. It means more people are being served. Now, you put it again, is change here say, or can you regulate? Of course, you still need regulation. Yep. The question is, what is the purpose of regulation, and how do you adapt it to the new business models? You know, the taxi rules in New York City really were pretty ossified. I mean, they were designed for an industry, the bulk of them were designed for the industry of the 1930s. Yep. And then they were updated for the dial-a-car and radio car industry of the 1960s and 70s, and that's where they've been ever since. You know, that doesn't fit a smartphone-based industry, which is what every car is going to be in a few years. I think even the yellow taxis, you will see moving over towards smartphone usage. You know, look, we were a little bit ahead of that curve too when we put the credit cards and the screens in. But if you stop and you think about it, look, when we did that, it was revolutionary. It was 2008. It was revolutionary. No tax. You couldn't pay by credit card in taxi. When we did that, it was the only city in the country, and until very recently was still the only city in the country where you could pay in every taxi by credit card. If you did that today, you wouldn't need to put a screen and a whole swipe, equipment into your taxi cab. You would just have, you would let people do it on their phones. At most, you'd put an RFID chip so that you can touch your phone. That's the most you would do. So, we can't be stuck in the 70s much, not even in 2008, and technology moves so fast now. So do you need regulation? Yes, you do. You have to remember what the core purpose is, which is health and safety of the passenger, right? So you want to know that the driver is a safe driver. Yep. It's not somebody who's had 15 speeding tickets. It's not somebody who got pulled over for drunk driving a year ago or even 5 years ago. That there's always going to be a need for. How you do it. So do you need a giant bureaucracy to do those screening work and do those background checks? Or can you rely on the networks that these industries have created to do the screening? I think the answer is you can do the former. The second one, the latter, it's much cheaper. Yeah. And at the end of the day, every dollar that goes into the regulation is a dollar that the customer is going to have to pay down the line. So you want to keep the regulatory goals in mind, safety of the passenger. You just want to do that in a smarter way that takes full advantage of the technology that's available today.
Interesting. Whenever we see a disruptive force come to the market, it seems like almost instantly there's always conflict. There's always, the taxis, they're saying like, we need to, essentially get these people out of our market. There's never a situation where it comes together and say like, how do we work together to come to a solution and maybe, take some of the technology or the disruptive ideas and make the system better. Is there an approach there that could happen? And in your experience, was there an ability to kind of bridge that gap to make them move towards where I think technology is going? Clearly, because even with Uber, you see with the subways overloaded too, you're going to see more people going to Uber for that as a source of better transportation as well.
No question. Look, I think of the taxis and car services, the app companies. They are part of the transit network. They are the decentralized, market responsive sector of the transit network. Subway cars are, they're fixed where they go, huge investment to get them. Still fastest way to get from Midtown downtown. But the taxi and car services are a critical supplement to that. Okay. Conflict, it's funny. When they say politics ain't beanbag, it's because there's money at stake. And people, when it's their money that's at stake, they're going to fight tooth and nail and use every means at their disposal, whether it's lobbying and pressuring elected officials or using the courts. Look, the change that we effected when I was at the TLC, that the taxi fleet owners fought tooth and nail, tried to fight it with lobbyists, tried to fight it with litigators, took us to the highest court in New York State twice, and twice we beat them, 6-0. So, but they're going to fight because to them it's profit. The key is for the regulator, and the current TLC, which headed by Mira Zoshi, who is tremendous. We worked together. She was the general counsel when I served at the Taxi and Limousine Commission. She's as smart as they come, as super ethical, with real integrity and real substance. The way you do it, you asked, how do you deal with the conflict and when with industry segments that are self-interested and don't care about the public. The key is that the regulator has to keep the public interest first. I mean, it sounds like a cliche and sounds simple. Hard to do oftentimes when you have highly paid and sophisticated lobbyists kind of in your face day in, day out. But if anybody can do that, Mira Zoshi can. And also focus on the substance, and you have to just be very patient about it and separate out all the arguments. Well, it's terrible, too many cars. Well, let's think about it. What does that mean? Why is that a problem? Is it in fact a problem? What are the problematic parts of that we can then address? You have to be patient. You have to focus on the substance. And that's I think that's what the TLC is doing under Commissioner Zoshi.
Okay. Before I let you go, I know that as you left the TLC, Mayor de Blasio was running for office, and he was not a big fan of yours. Had some, I would say, critical of your term there, and specifically said that you would be the first person to leave when he was elected. 18 months out, have you seen how his administration's worked forward? You had high comments for Commissioner Joshi. Do you think that, what's your take on how he's doing, the job he's doing?
I think the administration is doing well, and when there are policy differences among people in public life, it's rarely personal, and it's normal to have policy differences. I think the administration, is off to a really good start, and it's peopled with, superb and highly competent and, in many cases, kind of career government folks who really know what they're doing. And look, I live here in New York, and my two daughters, I hope, are going to, stay here and settle here. So I have a big stake in what the city looks like in the future.
Great. David Yassky, Dean of the Pace Law School, thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.